Receiving a gift of a telescope when he was 6 years old launched Jonathan Gradie's fascination with the universe and how it could change in an instant. But who could have predicted that this early interest would someday lead to having an asteroid named in his honor? The son of Robert and Avis Gradie grew up on Bradley Road in the Putnam Heights section of his community, along with 7 siblings. This location provided him added elevation, and while it might not have increased the range of his new telescope, it enhanced his curiosity and inspiration to wonder what it all meant. Involvement in scouting, from a cub to a Boy Scout, provided increased opportunities to pursue his passion as he accumulated merit badges that led to the attainment of becoming an Eagle Scout and an induction into the Order of Arrow Scouting Society. Jonathan also began to develop his entrepreneurial skills at an early age. When he had difficulty coming up with the $3.95 to purchase a telescope advertised in Boy's Life magazine, he came up with a scheme of selling his brother and sisters future looks through the telescope upon its arrival. 2 close friends, John Hayden and Richard Stockdale, also had an interest in astronomy. The 3 pooled their various talents and erected an observatory on the Gradie property in the 1960s. It included a retractable roof, allowing the trio to have a partial view with their 8-inch telescope. But the visibility was enhanced when Jonathan, with axe in hand, toppled one of Mom's favorite trees. And like George, we assume he could not tell a lie and accepted his fate. A favorite Putnam High memory was an encounter with then-Principal Charlotte McCullough. John stayed home to study for a French exam and then attempted to sneak into the school from a side entrance. His stroll down the front corridor came to an abrupt halt when he heard a booming voice being sent in his direction. "Mr. Gradie, do you have an explanation?" Success in science at Putnam High School enabled Jonathan to take part in 4 selective state science fairs. It was here where he learned of the scientific facility offerings at the University of Arizona. Coupled with advice of a high school English teacher who encouraged students to go far away to college so that mistakes could be made without parent repercussions, was enough for him to make the journey west. While majoring in astronomy and physics at Arizona was challenging enough, John found time for other activities. When he discovered that 500 girls were trying out for the fall cheerleading squad and only a handful of boys, his strong math background enabled him to determine that this was a great ratio. However, a near collision with a running back on the sidelines gave him second thoughts, so he settled on the usual fraternity house activities. It was about this time that he met Nancy, his wife-to-be. John, being from Putnam, and Nancy from Woodstock, it was natural for them to have their first introduction at O'Hare Airport in Chicago.
It was December 23rd, 1976, and there'd been a snowstorm, so O'Hare had been shut down for 18 to 20 hours, and the 2 of us managed to get the last flight out to Hartford that night. He showed up and his shoes were covered with mud. His coat was too large. Had holes in it. He hadn't shaved probably in 4 or 5 days. He was carrying a stack of daisy printer paper, the paper that was all attached together, a beat-up briefcase, and I just figured it's only 2 hours, I can endure this. It was pretty quiet, and then he said to me, we took off. "I don't recognize that star out there," and I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but that's the light on the end of the wing," which I thought was an odd thing. And then he brought out a leather case, and it was a calculator. I'd never seen anything that small. I was like amazed. And that's how we started talking. I wanted to know what that was. I was still from the day of the slide rule.
Nancy's survival of the 2-hour flight has been extended for an over 40-year union. Jonathan remained at Arizona after attaining his bachelor's degree in astronomy as a graduate research assistant in the Lunar and Planetary Lab. He then became just one of 3 from a class of 120 first-year students to receive his PhD in planetary sciences, before moving on to Cornell University as a research scientist and instructor in the Department of Astronomy. When an offer came from the University of Hawaii to join its staff, there was little hesitancy to accept the offer, and it resulted in a stay of 32 years. It was a time of transition, as Hawaii was evolving from an agrarian, tourism, military-based economy to one of high-tech. Jonathan hoped to replicate the success of Silicon Valley in Hawaii. During his prolonged stay in the 50th state, his discoveries, associations, and recognition soared to new heights. In addition to serving on NASA's Earth observation team, his studies included the atmosphere of Venus, the current accepted theory on the formation of the Milky Way, the composition of asteroids based on reflectivity, and the discovery of a quasar in 1976 that we now know to be a black hole. Jonathan ultimately uncovered the compositional structure of an asteroid belt and the fingerprint of the formation of the solar system 4.5 billion years ago. It was for this discovery that the International Astronomical Union assigned asteroid number 3253 the name Gradie. While scientific study did not come to a complete halt in the early 1990s, entrepreneurship was a new phase of John's accomplishments and led to the founding of 3 high-tech startup companies. As founder, president, and senior scientist, he grew Terra Systems Incorporated from a cottage business to a private consulting service that includes military intelligence and medical applications, including imagery of cervical cancer, colon lesions, and eye imaging for diabetes detection. Dr. Gradie holds 2 U.S. patents, one for a holographic imaging spectrometer and another for a video search and rescue device. In 2000, he was named an International Astronomical Ernst Young Entrepreneurial Finalist. But the restless, ever-inquisitive, always forward-looking mind was also used to enhance John and Nancy's personal life. Their children, Hunter and Michaela, were born in Hawaii. The Gradies were first in their community to install solar panels and one of the first in Hawaii to own an electric vehicle. After their lengthy 32-year stay on the island, the Gradies made a decision to leave Hawaii. A major factor was climate change. Jonathan determined that the location of their house was susceptible to a future tsunami. After considering potential relocations, they agreed that the best solution was returning to their roots. It was a familiar location and lifestyle that they could both easily readjust to, and it brought them back closer to their families and newfound friends.
When I first met Jonathan, I was deeply impressed by his depth of knowledge on everything. If Jonathan has a topic, he can go into it deeper and longer than anyone that I ever know. He makes me laugh. I really admire Jonathan because he does a lot of that volunteer work, and he does do many interesting things to improve the community.
His 2 grown children, Hunter in New York City and Michaela in Woodstock, are close enough for frequent visits and granddaughters, Elizabeth and Mackenzie, increase the family enjoyment. There is no indication that the inquisitive mind has shifted into a lower gear. Making maple syrup from the trees on the family homestead on the Heights, creating a strategic plan for the preservation and improvement of the Roseland Park Golf Course, and continuing as president of Terrace Systems provide a busy schedule. The call to inform Jonathan that he was a 2022 inductee almost went unanswered.
The phone number didn't jive, and it said Willimantic, and Jonathan went, well, I'm not answering this because I don't know who this number is. And I said, I think you better, because you had lunch in Willimantic today with a friend, and maybe you left your credit card or something. He goes, oh, okay, and he picks it up. And then he was like, he got off the phone, he could hardly talk. He was so overwhelmed, and it takes a lot to overwhelm him. So it was wonderful. It was great.
When asked which of his accomplishments might be the one he most cherishes, without hesitation the response was, marrying Nancy. That quote by itself undoubtedly solidifies Jonathan Gradie a spot on the Putnam High School Wall of Honor.
I think that a person who has come from a town like Putnam, an old mill town itself, that Jonathan Gradie has made the most of himself, and I think that he rightfully belongs among the stars of Putnam High School's history.